It's the morning of 7 November 1944, high over Yugoslavia. 12:30, 8 lightnings cruise above the broken clouds, aluminum wings flashing in the pale sun. They are deep over enemy-held territory, now turning back without striking something means flying the same gauntlet home. Still heavy with ammunition, still exposed. There will be no safe way out. Whatever target presents itself, they will have to take it. In the lead cockpit, Colonel Clarence Edwinson scans the landscape far below, eyes flicking between rivers, rail lines, and roads. Then he sees it, a thin white plume stabbing up through the cold morning air. Steam, he leans forward, squinting. Down there, a dark shape moves along the rail line, trailing that white cloud like a beacon. A German steam train. It's not the primary target briefed back at base, but it is German, it is moving, and it is vulnerable. In his mind, the decision is instant, automatic. Let's go get it, boys. He barks into the radio. He hauls the Lightning over on its side and noses down. The squadron follows him into the dive, 12 twin-boom fighters dropping out of the sky, throttles forward. Altitude bleeds away airspeed builds. The mountains swell up beneath them, the train growing from a dot into a long dark line of cars with a black locomotive at the head. The sight in front of Edwinson steadies over the locomotive's boiler. The train looks almost fragile from here, like a toy set laid across the Yugoslav countryside. Finger on the trigger, he closes to point-blank range. He squeezes. The Lightning shudders as its nose guns open up. 50 caliber rounds and 20 shells rake along the locomotive, walking up its length. Behind and beside him, more P-38s fire. The whole lead section spits flame and metal at the train. The boiler erupts in white plumes where the bullets smash through. Steam vents in wild geysers from new-made holes, wrapping the engine in a ghostly cloud. Cars jolt, debris flies. Then they are already past, hurtling low over the rail line, engines howling as they pull back on the yokes and climb away, arcing back up into the sky. For a heartbeat, there is only the roar of their Allison engines and the fading smear of the ruined locomotive behind them. Then the Germans answer. Black blossoms of flak erupt around the formation, sudden, ugly flowers of smoke and steel. The calm blue air is gone, the world turns violent. Shrapnel hisses past the cockpits, rattling against thin metal skins. Edwinson flinches as a burst goes off too close off his port wing, the concussion thumping his chest even through the canopy. Everyone, get low, he snaps over the radio. The order is reflex. Up here, they are perfect targets. Black silhouettes against the sky. Down low, hugging the ground, they can force the guns to work harder, to guess lead angles instead of just elevation. The Lightnings tip back down again, trying to dive under the flak, but the timing is wrong. The Germans have them already bracketed. One burst does, just pepper a Lightning, it walks straight into it. Up 30, it a few places off Edwinson's wing, disappears in a flash of orange and black. The aircraft seems to fold in on itself, then trails burning fragments as it peels away, nose dropping. Hit, going down, the voice over the radio is high, panicked, still impossibly clear. Edwinson shoves his Lightning lower, skimming toward the tops of the trees as he twists in his harness, craning around to find the stricken aircraft. The ground is only a smear of green and brown beneath his wings now. He sees it too late to help. The burning 38 slams into a hillside in a burst of fire and debris. No controlled descent, no attempt to level out, a fireball, and then just a smear of black on the slope. Does anyone see a shoot? Edwinson demands, eyes scanning the sky above and behind them as his Lightning streaks over the treetops. Silence, somewhere in the background, flak continues to thump and crackle, fading as they race away. But on the radio, nobody speaks. Negative, sir, one of the pilots finally replies, voice flat, resigned. Edwinson stares ahead again, jaw clenched so hard his teeth ache. He doesn't answer at first. There's nothing to say that will bring the man back or change what they still have to do. Copy, he says at last, the single word tight with barely contained anger. The Lightnings tear on over the Serbian mountains, every pilot riding the turbulence just above the hills, winding through the folds of the terrain. Pine-covered slopes rush by beneath them, rocky outcrops flick past under their wingtips. Down here, there is no room for error and no time to think about the man who just died behind them. Out ahead, the terrain suddenly falls away. The ground drops into a wide basin, a huge valley opening like a bowl in the mountains. Fields, roads, and a patchwork of buildings spread across the floor below. As Edwinson banks slightly to take it in, his memory clicks with the morning's briefing. This looks right. The valley, the orientation of the road, the open stretch nearby, just as the intel officers described. He follows the line of the main road with his eyes, scanning north. They're exactly where he expects it. A long column moves along the road toward Belgrade. Trucks, armored vehicles, and tanks spaced out in a long file, heading north. In his mind, the shapes resolve instantly into German steel, German troops, German fuel and ammunition. In the wake of the train and the loss of one of his men, there is not even a flicker of doubt. There are those sons of bitches, he mutters under his breath, then thumbs the radio. Blue flight, get that German convoy, he orders, voice hard. Red and yellow to the airfield. Yes, sir. The replies come back, clipped and eager. He splits the squadron with that one command. One element, blue flight, swings low, angling toward the moving column. Red and yellow flights stay with him, eyes already hunting for the airfield they've been briefed on. What they believe is a Luftwaffe base with Messerschmitt 109s on the ground or in the circuit. Down below, no one in the slow-moving column has any idea they have just been marked as the enemy. The vehicles are not German. They fly red flags, not swastikas. Red Army troops and Yugoslav partisans pack the trucks and tanks, celebrating the anniversary of the October Revolution as they roll through liberated territory. Soldiers sit on fenders and engine decks, smoking, talking, singing over the rumble of the columns. Soviet flags and banners of their Yugoslav allies flutter proudly from antennae and rails, splashes of bright color against the gray and brown of the road. One of the men looks up first, catching a tremor in the soundscape, a low growl that isn't an engine on the ground. He shades his eyes and peers into the distance. Specks move against the sky, glinting silver, aircraft. Word passes along the column, heads tilt back. Men smile as the shapes grow closer and resolve into the twin boom, silhouettes of 38 Lightnings, American fighters they know from posters and rumors. Allies, friends, the singing resumes louder. Some men stand up in the beds of trucks to wave their caps and flags skyward. No one is especially alarmed when several of the aircraft begin to break out of their formation overhead, peeling off and turning directly toward the road. Only a few in the column notice the angle, the speed, the way those wings are leveled and locked. No, they are about to strafe us. Someone shouts in Russian, voice suddenly sharp with fear. He grabs at the nearest man, pointing frantically at the diving fighters. A handful of soldiers around him understand instantly. They throw themselves off the sides of vehicles, hitting the ditch hard. Others fumble for flags, seizing bright red banners from their comrades and raising them high, waving them desperately. They are still waving when the Lightnings descend into their firing runs. From above, blue flight roars in. Engines a deafening thunder that drowns out any stray note of song, drifting up from the road. The convoy lines up perfectly under their noses, a dark chain marching north. The American pilots see nothing but what they expect to see. A column in enemy-held country, using German-type vehicles, on a road leading toward Belgrade. There is no time for questions at this speed. Triggers are pulled. Guns respond with a savage, mechanical chatter. Tracer lines stitch down across the road, walking their way through the leading trucks and along the column. Men and metal vanish into fountains of dust, splinters, and smoke. Vehicles swerve, halt, or erupt in fire as bullets hammer through thin armor and canvas. On the ground, the column disintegrates into chaos. Some Soviet soldiers drop flat, trying to crawl off the road. Others run for the ditches or for the nearest cover, too slow under the storm of lead. Trucks jackknife. A tank grinds sideways off the roadside, tracks chewing dirt, turret swinging uselessly skyward as the crew inside tries to understand why they are being attacked by American aircraft. Then bombs fall, the Lightning's bellies cough out their ordnance, dark shapes tumble down, fuses ticking away seconds of life before impact. Explosions erupt among what remains of the convoy, orange fireballs punching up into the air. Shockwaves clobber men and vehicles alike, hurling them aside. The road disappears under rolling pillars of smoke and fire. The valley echoes with the roar of detonations, the scream of metal, and the raw cries of the wounded. Not far away on the edge of the same valley, the sound reaches a different set of ears. At a nearby Soviet airfield, lookouts on duty hear the distant thumps and rumbles and turn instinctively toward the sound. A moment later, they spot the glint of multiple aircraft coming in low and fast, skimming along the valley toward them. "Man the guns," one of the officers bellows. Klaxons and shouted commands cut through the morning air. Soviet soldiers sprint from dispersal huts and revetments toward anti-aircraft positions that ring the field. Dust kicks up under their boots as they run past parked aircraft and fuel trucks. Manual cranks spin. Barrels swing skyward. Men heave ammunition into place, slamming belts into gun housings, feeding clips into magazines. The first guns spit out a tentative burst, then more join in, the airfield's defenses waking up in a jagged roar. Tracers streak out over the field, red and white lines arcing up toward the oncoming intruders. Up above, Edwinson has already spotted the airfield and made his decision. From his cockpit, the patch of leveled earth, hangars, and parked aircraft is exactly where their intelligence said a German base would be. To him, the shapes scattered along the field are enemy fighters, Luftwaffe 109's Nosetotail, just waiting to be destroyed before they can get airborne. He leads his section down toward them, committing to the attack. The first arcs of anti-aircraft fire reach out to meet them, ugly black puffs rising in staggered lines, sharper streaks of tracer whipping up at awkward angles as gunners adjust their aim. "Stay in it," he growls, more to himself than anyone else, as his canopy fills with the growing field. Shells burst dangerously close, rocking some of the Lightnings as they plunge into their dives, but the American pilots hold their lines. Adrenaline, anger over their lost comrades, and training fuse into that one mindset: hit the target, then worry about getting out alive. The nose of Edwinson's Lightning settles on a row of parked aircraft. He squeezes the trigger. The P-38s concentrated battery of 50 caliber machine guns and its 20 mm cannon unleashed together. The recoil shudders through the airframe as the stream of rounds rips down across the earth, chewing into the ground and walking along the neat line of parked machines. From below, the Soviet aircraft, Yaks and other types erupt under the assault. Wings shatter, fuselages explode into fragments. Canvas and metal burst apart, as if made of paper under the concentrated fire. Fuel tanks go up in clumps of orange and black flame. Around him, the rest of red and yellow flights do the same. Their fire plows furrows through parked aircraft, crates, and vehicles, leaving trails of explosions and dust. The sound of enemy anti-aircraft fire mixes with the crackling impacts striking their own messers. Mental picture of the airfield. They hear and feel hits on their own aircraft too. Lightnings shiver as 20 mm shells and smaller rounds smack into wings and fuselages, puncturing aluminum, shredding control surfaces. One bursts near a cockpit, peppering glass with fragments. The air around them is thick with lethal debris. "Pull up," Edwinson shouts, satisfied with the damage on the ground and suddenly all too aware of the black puffs closing in. One by one, the 38s yank back on their yokes, roaring out of their dives barely above the ground, engines howling as they claw back for altitude. Their noses rise, their bellies flash to the gun crews below. All but one. Second Lieutenant Eldon Carlson hauls back on his controls with everything he has. The muscles in his arms burn, his shoulders ache, but his Lightning doesn't respond the way it should. The aircraft shudders, sluggish. The nose rises, but not enough. He's taken more damage than he realized on the way down. Control cables, maybe. Elevator surfaces. Something critical is no longer there or no longer answering. "She's not coming up," he yells into the radio, voice cracking with effort and fear. Down below, the Soviet gun crews see a single twin-boom aircraft, still flying much lower and flatter than the others, almost skimming the grass. To them, it looks like a fatally wounded enemy trying to drag itself away. Every barrel on the field swings toward him. Fire intensifies. Tracers fill the air around Carlson's Lightning in a dense, lethal web. Impacts hammer into his wings, his tail. The aircraft jerks as more metal is ripped away. Sections of wing vanish under the hits. Elevator surfaces shred. The P-38 lurches, nose dropping as any remaining control authority slips out of his hands. Carlson yanks back again, but the yoke comes back light and useless. There is no more lift left in the ruined airframe. A kilometer from the airfield, the nose pitches down hard. The ground rushes up. Carlson's P-38 slams into the earth and erupts into a ball of fire and debris. Edwinson, climbing out with the others, catches the flash in his peripheral vision. Another bright, ugly blossom of flame in the valley. Another one of his men gone. The anger in his chest sharpens, turning almost cold. In his mind there is no doubt who is responsible. The Germans on the ground. German guns, German fighters, German pilots, they are going to pay. Build some altitude and go in again. He orders, voice harsh over the net, as the P-38s pull up into a wide arc above the embattled Soviet airfield, already preparing for another dive. Down below, the men he believes are Germans are anything but, and they are gearing up to fight back in the only way they can. Down below, anti-aircraft fire continues to stab skyward at the receding lightnings. To the men on the guns, those twin booms and mid-mounted tails look like something they've been briefed on before the war and barely seen since. German twin boom F-180, 9 reconnaissance aircraft. Strange that they are attacking in force like this, but under fire. There is no time for doubt. They fire at what they have been told to expect. As smoke drifts across the field, another order slices through the confusion. Combat alert. All pilots scramble. Red Army pilots, some half-dressed, some already in flight gear, sprint through the haze toward the remaining yaks parked along the field's edge. Mechanics wave them on, ducking as stray rounds from above crack and whine across the tarmac. The first to reach their aircraft are Lieutenant Krivonogikh and his wingman, Junior Lieutenant Shipulya. Their Yak-9s sit side by side, nose toward the makeshift strip, already half-armed and fueled. Krivonogikh clambers up onto the wing and into the cockpit in a practiced fluid motion. His hands move almost on their own harness, switches, fuel, magnetos. The engine coughs once, twice, then catches, the V-12 settling into a ragged growl that smooths into a steady rumble. Next to him, Shipulya's yak roars to life as well, exhaust fumes curling in the cold air. Shipulya, faster, Krivonogikh urges over the intercom, glancing out of his canopy. Air raid chaos surrounds them. Beyond the line of dispersals, explosions still blossom where the P-38's first attack struck. Burning aircraft throw columns of black smoke into the sky. Tracers from the ground punch up, some arcing clean past the climbing Americans above. Ahead, the dirt and grass runway is clear for the moment, but Edwinson's Lightnings, forming for their second run, are already banking back toward the field. Krivonogikh releases the brakes. The yak lurches forward, prop biting hard into the air. Shipulya falls in just behind and to the side, his own aircraft bouncing along the uneven surface. Both pilots push their throttles to the wall, the engines answer with a full-throated roar. They thunder down the strip, control surfaces buzzing as they pick up speed. Overhead, the looming shapes of the incoming P-38s grow larger by the second. At rotation speed, Krivonogikh eases back. The yak's tail comes up, then the wheels skip once and leave the ground. Shipulya's aircraft does the same, barely yards behind him. The two Soviet fighters skim low over the treetops at the far end of the runway, hugging the terrain, trying to stay below the enemy's guns for at least a few more seconds. Behind them, though, not all of their comrades are so lucky. The scramble order has sent a tangle of yaks and other Soviet aircraft onto the same strip at once. A larger group is still accelerating down the runway when the P-38s come diving back in. From above, Edwinson sees it all in a single, chilling snapshot. Multiple fighters bunched together, still low and slow, noses only just starting to rise. Perfect targets, a lot of fighters incoming, he warns, already rolling his Lightning into the attack. Make a defensive circle, we're shooting our way out. Get those planes before they gain altitude. No, one argues. They have just watched 2 of their own die. Now they see what they think is a mass scramble of German fighters trying to get airborne beneath them. The Lightnings tip over into a coordinated dive. Anti-aircraft tracers reach up to meet them, but the Americans are used to running the gauntlet. They barrel straight down through the fire, intent on the runway. Crosshairs settle across the departing yaks. Triggers are squeezed. Bullets and shells pour out of the 38's noses, intersecting the crowded takeoff path. One yak, still Talo, takes a burst squarely through its cockpit and engine. The aircraft seems to fold in mid-stride, cartwheeling grotesquely before exploding at the runway's edge. Others are hit in wings and fuselages. One pilot manages to wrench his wounded fighter into a lopsided climb, smoke streaming behind him. Another ground loops, throwing up dust and debris, his aircraft ripping itself apart in a shower of metal and fabric. The Soviet formation, so close to getting airborne as a unit, is ripped into scattered fragments. Lookouts on the field, stunned by the savagery of the attack, nevertheless keep their guns firing. Tracers stitch up past the diving Americans, some so close they leave momentary afterimages across cockpit glass. The Lightnings complete their attack runs and roar overhead. Some of them haul hard into defensive turns, beginning to form the loose circle, Edwinson Orderetta, rotating wheel of fighters, covering one another's tails. All guns pointing outward. But not everyone is focused on escape. One Soviet pilot, who has just managed to claw his damaged yak off the runway by the skin of his teeth, looks up through his canopy and sees his own attacker. The 38 that has just shot past him is now pulling up out of its own dive, climbing away to rejoin its section. For a heartbeat, its belly is exposed, its energy bled off in the pull-up. He recognizes the fleeting chance. Instinct overrides fear. He hauls his yak's nose up, engine straining as he points the aircraft nearly vertical. The climb bleeds his own speed away, but he does need much just a moment with the American in his sights. The canopy frame shakes. The world outside becomes sky and nothing but sky. Crosshairs slide over the 38's tail fuselage wings. He squeezes the trigger, the yak's single 20mm cannon and its machine gun spit fire. A tight burst of rounds spears up and straight through the Lightning's path. The 38 flies directly into the storm. Metal peels back. One of the twin booms disintegrates under the hit's fragment scythe into the central pod. Fire blossoms along the engine nacelles. The fighter spasms in midair, then snaps into a vicious spin, trailing flame. Inside, tuned Lieutenant Philip Brewer has no time to process what has happened. 1 second, he is leveling out of his attack run the next. The cockpit is a blur of violent motion, instruments whirling uselessly in front of him. The Lightning tumbles nose over tail, burning, dropping toward the countryside northeast of the Soviet airfield. There is no altitude, no control, and no chance. It hits the ground in an eruption of fire and debris, vanishing from the fight as suddenly as it entered it. Back above the field, the surviving 38s pull away from their strafing runs, climbing back up and outward, trying to get free of the worst of the anti-aircraft fire. Tracers still chase them, but the angle is worsening for the gunners below. Edwinson glances down through the side of his canopy as he banks. On the patchwork of fields and trees around the airfield, he can see at least one enemy burning and 2 columns of thicker, blacker smoke where his own comrades went down. This is no longer the simple strike he expected. It has become a swirling, confused battle, with fighters now clawing for position over the valley. A lot of fighters incoming make a defensive circle. We're shooting our way out. He repeats, reinforcing the earlier command. The Lightnings begin to settle into a loose ring, each pilot watching the tail of the man ahead, ready to spray any enemy that tries to cut in. Lower down, skimming the treetops to the side of the main fight, Krivonogikh and Shipulya race away from the immediate kill zone, engines pushed up to full power. Their Yak-9s are quickly up over 400 kilometers per hour, leaves and branches mere blurs below their wings. For a moment, relative calm surrounds them. The roar in their ears is their own engines. The battle noise lies behind and slightly above, muffled by distance and terrain. In his cockpit, Krivonogikh takes a breath and looks toward the valley. There, cutting through the morning haze, he sees them. The same twin-boom shapes that have just savaged their runway are now swooping down on the road in the distance, ripping into the helpless convoy they were meant to protect. They watch in horror as plumes of earth and fire leap up from the column. From here, individual vehicles are only specks, but the violence is unmistakable. The convoy is being torn apart. Krivonogikh doesn't hesitate. They are isolated now, separated from the rest of their squadron by timing and chance, but that only narrows the choice. Shipulya, attack, ill cover you, he orders, pulling his yak's nose up toward the higher sky. Roger that. His wingman snaps back, voice tight but firm. Together they pitch up from their ground-dugging run, the treetops dropping away beneath them. The climb is steep, almost vertical for a few seconds. They punch up toward the level where the P-38s are circling, crossing through the hostile band of altitude where flak and fighters mingle. For the first time in history, fighters of the United States and the Soviet Union are about to meet in full-blooded air-to-air combat. Shipulya crests the climb a little ahead, throttle wide open. He rolls out, spots a lightning just ahead and above him, then tucks in to pursue. He comes sweeping in at high speed, closing from behind and slightly below. The P-38's twin fuselages fill his windscreen, that strange forked tail framing his target. He triggers his weapons. His 20mm and machine gun rounds leap out, slamming into one of the Lightning's twin booms, punching holes through metal, sending fragments flying. The American fighter jolts under the impacts, wobbling for a split second, but it doesn't go down. The P-38 staggers, then steadies, still flying. Shipulya flashes past, overshooting with too much speed. He grits his teeth, yanks the stick into a sharp turn, and begins to set up for another run. Above him, the American pilot, shaken but alive, does the one thing he can do, calls for help. 2 bandits on me, need a hand. His voice crackles over the P-38 net. 2 Lightnings, already circling as part of the defensive wheel, peel off the pattern. They dip their noses and come diving down to help their comrade, their silver wings cutting bright arcs in the sun as they accelerate toward Shipulya. Krivonogikh sees them at the edge of his vision, a double flash of movement in the cluttered sky. His heart rate kicks up a notch. "Shipulya, maneuver, break right," he shouts. It is just in time. Shipulya cranks his yak into a brutal right-hand break at the last second, ribs compressing under the globe. The world outside his canopy smears into a blur. The P-38's burst of fire scythes through the air he occupied a moment earlier, tracers whipping past his tail. He narrows everything down to pure survival. He twists and jinks, throwing his yak into hard turns, slips, and sudden changes of direction. The American fighters stay on him, their guns stitching angry lines of tracer just off his wingtips, past his nose, under his tail. "I can't get rid of him," Shipulya gasps, fighting the controls with both hands, the harness biting into his shoulders. "Hanging on, coming," Krivonogikh replies. He pushes his own yak to its limits, the engine howling as he races toward the knot of aircraft. Through the windscreen, he can see the chase unfolding. 1 Lightning latched onto Shipulya's tail, the other slightly higher and behind, positioning for a better shot. Each second feels stretched thin, the distance between them burning away as he closes. His crosshairs swing up, settling, first on 1 Lightning, then the other. He picks the higher one, the more immediate threat if it gets its guns on Shipulya. He fires. His rounds streak out, bright sparks against the sky, but the American sees the tracer and jerks away. The bullets pass just behind the P-38's wing. The American abandons his attack run at once, recognizing the danger of staying in a predictable path. He rolls away, breaking off and diving for safer air. Krivonogikh ignores him. His eyes are already on the second Lightning, the one still glued to Shipulya's tail. He swings his yak's nose onto the new target and squeezes the trigger again. This time his aim is perfect. The 20mm shells and machine gun bullets slam into the Lightning's twin booms, chewing chunks of metal from their leading edges. 1 engine nacelle ignites, flames bursting from panels torn loose by the impact. The aircraft jerks, begins to trail thick black smoke. The P-38 flies on, but it is no longer under the pilot's control. It yaws and rolls unevenly, slowly, then more violently, beginning a wide, wobbling descent. Inside, the American pilot senses the end of his ability to save the machine. There is a sickening list to one side, the controls gone mushy in his hands, the nose refusing to stay level. He pops the canopy, cold air slams into the cockpit. Without waiting any longer, he unclips, hauls himself up, and throws his body into the slipstream. The chute snaps open below him, a pale flower against the bruised sky. Above his burning 30, 8 continues on alone, then noses down, finally slamming into the earth roughly 8 kilometers to the north of the Soviet airfield. On the radio, Shipulya's voice comes through, breathless but grateful. "Thank you, Commander. You're welcome," Krivonogikh answers, allowing himself the briefest flash of satisfaction. Then his tone hardens again. "Prepare to fight," because even as they trade those words, more dots appear, swelling as they speed into the engagement zone. The rest of the Soviet squadronthos that survived takeoff and initial attack bursts onto the scene from below and to one side. Engines screaming, they fan out into the melee, their guns already flashing as they spray at the circling American fighters. From Krivonogikh's cockpit, it's like watching a door slam open. Where there were only 2 yaks before, now there are many, diving into the fight and scattering the lightnings, carefully forming defensive pattern. Relief flickers through him. Outnumbered a moment ago, they might now have the numbers to turn this around. He and Shipulya plunge back toward the furball, but almost immediately the chaos splits them apart. A hard turn here, a sudden climb there, and a swarm of weaving. Turning aircraft creates impassable walls of moving aluminum between them. Krivonogikh locks onto a single American fighter and gives chase. The 38, sensing the danger, chooses altitude over turn, trying to spiral upward and out of reach, using its climb rate to escape. The 2 fighters wind a climbing corkscrew through the sky, loops tightening as both pilots test what their machines can do. But down at this low altitude, in this dense, lumpy air, the 38 is out of its element. Its high-altitude strengths count for little. The Yak-9, leaner and built for this alt-band, eats up the distance hand over fist. Krivonogikh closes in. The American fighter now fills his gun sight, pulling tighter and tighter, but never enough to shake him. He has the advantage. He is about to press the trigger, about to send another lightning down in flames, when an entirely different threat intrudes. On the ground below, 1 Soviet anti-aircraft crew is still doing its grim work, traversing their gun by eye and instinct toward any silhouette they can identify as hostile. In the smoke and confusion, the difference between a Yak's profile and a 38's at speed at an odd angle isn't so clear. Whether it's bad aim, a misjudged lead, or simply an overeager crew squeezing off shots at any fast-moving dot, no one will ever know for sure. What is certain is that their barrel tracks the wrong aircraft. A burst of fire erupts from the position, arcs upward and meets Krivonogikh's Yak. He gets no warning, no radio call, just sudden, brutal impacts. The Yak shudders as if kicked apart from within. The canopy fills with sparks and fragments. The nose yaws violently, one wing seems to stagger. Then the aircraft disintegrates. Pieces peel away in mid-air wing, tail, shards of fuselage, tumbling separately as the main mass of the fighter becomes a flaming wreck, dropping toward the ground in a widening spread of debris. Shipulya, a short distance away in the swirling dogfight, hears nothing from his commander. He tries the radio. Commander Krivonogikh respond. He calls, scanning the chaos desperately. Out of the shifting maze of contrails and smoke, he spots it, a streak of burning wreckage plummeting down, leaving a ragged trail of black behind it. His stomach drops. His friend is gone. For a heartbeat, grief slams into him, threatening to pull his focus off the fight. The urge to follow that falling trail with his eyes all the way to impact is strong. He forces himself to look away. The sky around him is full of enemies. 38s dart and climb, some alone, some in pairs. Yaks twist and dive to meet them. Tracers carve lethal geometry through the air. Shipulya swallows the lump in his throat, clamps down on the pain, and scans for an opportunity. He's alone now, again outnumbered, but the field below is still under attack. His comrades still engaged. Whatever happens next, he is not going to flee and leave them to it. He spots up 38 beneath him, angling up into the fight. He shoves the stick forward, nose dropping, the Yak plunging down toward the American fighter. 38 swarm around him, their twin tails flicking across his canopy as they maneuver. One of them hauls into a steep climb in front of him, its speed bleeding away until it hangs on the edge of a stall. Then, with a sudden nose drop of its own, it falls back through the air and opens fire. Shipulya has no time to brake, no room to evade. His dive line and the Lightning's firing line intersect at just the wrong moment. His yak flies straight through the American's burst. Rounds slam into his engine, his cockpit, his wings. The aircraft lurches, shuddering. Flames lick back along the fuselage, smoke flooding past the canopy. He fights the controls for a second, too, but the yak is already lost. The burning fighter drops away, trailing fire. It hits the ground roughly 500 meters north of the airfield. Shipulya had been trying to defend, disintegrating on impact. Above, Soviet losses continue to mount. Another yak is caught in a P-38, its gun sight and chewed apart, spiraling down in flames. Many others bear scars, holes punched in wings and tails, control cables severed, engines running rough. On the ground, harried officers and controllers hammer at radios and field telephones, voices urgent, calling every nearby base. They need help, they need more fighters in the air. At a separate airfield within reach, the calls for assistance reach a fresh unit of Soviet Yak-3 fighters. At their head is Captain Alexander Koldunov. His squadron scrambles into their cockpits, engines roaring to life almost as one, answering the desperate plea from their comrades under attack. As they lift off and form up, Koldunov runs the situation in his mind. The controllers told him what they thought they were facing, German F-180-9s. He frowns behind his mask. The F-180-9, the Flying Eye, is a reconnaissance machine, twin boom like the P-38, but slower, usually operating alone or in pairs for observation. It is not a type known for leading brutal, sustained strikes like this. Something doesn't feel right. He files the unease away, but doesn't ignore it. As his Yak-3s streak toward the embattled valley, climbing to engagement altitude, he prepares himself for a fight. But a corner of his mind is already wary, already asking questions the briefing doesn't answer. Those questions will only grow louder when he sees what waits for him over the target. Koldunov's Yak-3s slice through the cold Yugoslav air, engines at combat power, sunlight flashing off their wings as they close on the embattled valley. The radioed picture in his head still does match what he's expecting. V-180-9s, German recon twins, somehow conducting a full-scale airfield and convoy attack. It makes no sense, but the smoke rising ahead of him, burning columns, the black smears over an airfield. That is real enough. They press on. As they near the fight, dots resolve into aircraft, many aircraft circling, diving, and climbing over the valley. Koldunov narrows his eyes, trying to pick out friend from foe. Then he sees it. Not the spindly, greenhouse-canopied Flying Eye he was told to expect, but a broad-winged, muscular twin-boom shape with engines in the wings and a solid central pod. An unmistakable silhouette, what he has seen in Allied briefings and propaganda photos. An American P-38 Lightning. His gut tightens. That is not German. In an instant, the whole battle reframes itself in his mind. This is Germans attacking a Soviet field. These are Americans hammering a Soviet convoy and airfield because they think they are the enemy. This is friendly fire, a catastrophic scale. Hold fire, he snaps to his men, even as they close the distance. Do not attack yet. He angles his Yak-3 slightly off the main flow of combat, throttling back just enough to avoid overshooting, then shoves the nose toward the 3 formation. If this is going to stop, it has to stop now, before any more of his countrymen die under Allied guns. He pushes his aircraft straight through the maelstrom, slipping between climbing and diving fighters, tracers streaking past. A lesser pilot might pull back, but Koldunov stays in it, eyes locked on one section of P-38s that looks loosely intact, the probable flight leader among them. He picks his path, aims himself not at their tails, but at their wing, side by side. He brings his Yak-3 roaring up alongside one of the Lightnings, just outside collision distance, throttle carefully matched so their speeds align. Then he waggles his wings hard back and forth, a universal signal. We are not enemies. Over the roar of the engine and the rush of wind, he hears his own breathing, faster than usual. He glances across the short gulf of air between cockpits, searching for the P-38 pilot's face behind the glass. We are allies, he yells aloud, though he knows the American cannot hear him. He rocks his wings again, more emphatically this time. The red stars on his fuselage and wings flash in the sun as he rolls. For a second, he thinks it might be working. Then the P-38 suddenly throttles back. The Lightning slides behind his wing line, dropping into what to any fighter pilot is an unmistakable position, onto his 6. Gun position, damn it, Koldunov snarls, kicking his rudder and hauling the stick over. The American opens fire. Tracer's scythe through the space he just occupied. Brilliant green-white lines whipping past his tail. He feels the yak shudder in the disturbed air, the shockwave of rounds tearing by too close for comfort. He throws the fighter into a brutal evasive pattern, jinking, rolling, dropping his nose, then snapping back up. The P-38 hangs on his tail for a moment, then loses him in the swirl of turning aircraft and breaks off. "Come on, what are you doing?" he mutters through clenched teeth, frustration and disbelief knotting together. He tries again. He cuts back through the chaos, dodging stray bursts of fire, searching this time for the center of the P-38 formationth aircraft, whose movements the others seem to key off, the one giving orders. On the net, Colonel Edwinson's Lightning. Up above, Edwinson is still driving his men hard, trying to punch their way out of what he's certain is a German trap. The sky is full of twisting, turning fighters. He hasn't had time to register individual insignia, he sees only threats and opportunities. Then something off his wingtip moves close, too close. A Yak-3 slides up almost alongside him, just ahead, not behind. Not on the attack. It levels out in parallel, so close he can't see the pilot's helmet, the lines of his oxygen mask. Edwinson frowns, instinctively tightening his grip on the controls. The Yak's wings rock, slow and deliberate. Once, twice, the red star on the wing root flares bright in the sun as it rolls. For a second, Edwinson doesn't understand what he's seeing. Then his eyes track along the Yak's fuselage, another star, another on the tail. His gaze flicks off to a different dogfight in the middle distance, another enemy fighter, also with a red star. And another. He scans the chaotic sky, his brain suddenly tearing free from the assumption it has been locked in since the first glimpse of the convoy. Every one of the supposed Luftwaffe aircraft he has been fighting wears Soviet markings. A cold, sick feeling washes through him. He feels it like a drop in altitude in his gut. His jaw clenches. For a heartbeat he is frozen there, the full implication slamming into him. The convoy, the airfield, the burning yaks and trucks, all theirs. "Holy shit," he breathes, the words barely audible even to himself. His hand snaps to the radio. "Ceasefire, ceasefire." He shouts, voice suddenly raw, cutting across the P-38 net with an urgency no one can ignore. "They are Soviets, everyone back to base, now. Repeat, everyone back to base, now." The order detonates inside the American formation. Pilots who a moment ago were lining up shots or scanning for targets suddenly jerk their heads around, looking for confirmation in the chaos around them. And they see it, red stars on wings, Soviet markings on fuselages, smoke pillars from a convoy they were supposed to be helping, not destroying. One by one, their stomachs drop the way Edwinson's just did. There is no time for discussion, they break off. Each P-38 rolls out of whatever turn it's in and swings its nose west toward home. The defensive circle dissolves into a ragged line of departing aircraft, throttles pushed up as far as their engines will take them. Below and around them, Soviet pilots see something different. Enemy fighters abruptly abandoning the fight, turning for retreat. Reflex and anger scream for a chase. Some of the yaks pivot after the fleeing lightnings, noses swinging to track them, fingers tightening on triggers. They have just seen comrades killed, friends burned on the runway and in the air. The instinct to shoot these attackers in the back is almost overwhelming. Koldunov sees them banking in. He snaps onto the radio, voice like a whip. "All pilots, let them go, they are allies," he orders, putting every ounce of authority into the words. There is a heartbeat of hesitation. Then, gradually, Yak-3 after Yak-3 relaxes its turn, easing off pursuit. The Soviet fighters level out, orbit back toward their battered airfield, leaving the departing P-38s to vanish into the western sky. On the ground, anti-aircraft guns slowly fall silent. The last scraps of smoke from their muzzles drift away on the wind. The terrible mistake has ended as suddenly as it began. In the stunned silence that follows, over burning trucks and shattered aircraft, the survivors on both sides are left with only questions. In the days that follow, those questions do not stay local. On the Soviet side, word of the incident climbs quickly up the chain of command. Reports speak of American fighters attacking a Soviet convoy, bombing an airfield, shooting down Soviet yaks in air-to-air combat. For some in the Soviet high command, the first reaction is not understanding or forgiveness. It is suspicion. Given the losses, given the ferocity of the attack, some voices argue this can only have been deliberately test, a warning, a message, something darker. For a moment, the political fallout threatens to grow far beyond a single valley in Yugoslavia. But there are other voices, too. Men closer to the front. Men who understand how quickly things happen in the air. How fast a wrong assumption can snowball when you're doing 400 kilometers an hour with flak in your face. And across the lines in Allied headquarters, there is no attempt to pretend nothing happened. The Americans admit the mistake. An official explanatory letter is sent to the Soviet side, laying out the chain of events as the US sees it. It details the destruction of the German train, the loss of a 8-2 German flak, the appearance of a convoy in enemy-held terrain on a road toward Belgrade, the attack on what the US airmen believed was a German airfield. It explains how, under the stress of combat and amid incomplete information, those American pilots became convinced they were hitting German forces, not Soviet ones, how they only realized too late what they had actually done. On the Soviet side, the story of 7 November 1944 does not disappear. Over the years, accounts are written and retold, often with details sharpened, dialogue polished, events framed in ways that serve a changing political context. The Soviet version that emerges in print and memoirs is vivid, sometimes heroic, sometimes bitterlikely embellished in parts, but preserving the core horror of that morning. On the American side, by contrast, information about the incident remains sparse. Official files are thin. Reports are partial. Some historians and enthusiasts come to believe that fuller documentation exists somewhere in classified archives, sealed under long-term restrictions perhaps for 100 years from the date of the event. Whether that is true or not, the fact remains. Over a Yugoslav valley on 7 November 1944, Allied aircraft fought and killed Allied troops and pilots, all under the iron pressure of the same constraint they faced at the beginning of the mission. No safe way back. Only snap decisions made at high speed with incomplete information. Edwinson and the surviving 8 pilots eventually land back at their base. They climb down from their aircraft to the site of empty parking spots, where 3 of their comrades' Lightnings should be. They know what they did to the convoy. They know what they saw burning on that airfield. Nothing in their training has prepared them for the idea of mourning their own dead, and at the same time, knowing that some of the wreckage they left behind belongs to men who were supposed to be on their side. On the Soviet airfields, the mood is no less complex. Men walk the crumpled remains of Yak-9s and Yak-3s shot apart on takeoff. Mechanics and pilots stand over craters where bombs fell among trucks and tanks, meant to drive on in celebration, not to become funeral pyres. They bury their dead, tend their wounded, and rebuild the airfield as best they can. They note the strange silhouettes of the attacking aircraft, learn the name Lightning, and add a layer of hard, private understanding to what the word I can mean in a real war. Strategically, the front line does move much because of this one incident. The Red Army still pushes west. The Americans and British still bomb German targets. The Axis powers don't gain a single meter of ground from the tragedy. Tactically and humanly, though, the consequences are carved into memory. Men who survived that day on both sides will never again look at a speck on the horizon without remembering how wrong you can be about what you think you see. How quickly a red star or a white star can be misread at 400 kilometers per hour. How fragile the line is between coordination and catastrophe, when radios, briefings, and maps are even slightly out of step. In the end, nothing can change the fact that on that November morning, anger over one lost pilot, poor identification, and the unforgiving nature of high-speed air combat combined to create a tragedy that could not be undone. Just as there was no easy way back for those 38s crossing into Yugoslav airspace at the start of their mission, There was no easy way back once the first trigger was pulled on that convoy road. If you've listened this far, I'd like to hear what struck you most in this story. Was it the first realization that the German convoy was Soviet? The moment friendly flak tore apart Krivonogikh's yak? Or the sudden sick silence when Edwinson finally saw the red stars on every enemy in the sky? Do you think the real deciding factor here was the hardware, the limits of radar eyesight and aircraft performance here, the human element? Anger, assumptions, and split-second judgment under fire. Let me know in the comments what you think, and what other forgotten missions or incidents you want to see covered next. And if you want to see how, just 55 years later and not far from this same part of the world, another pilot will be brought down this time, flying the world's first operation stealth. Now check out our film on how that shoot down happened.